My name is Lance Conrad, and I'm an author. I write books for a living. I went from crawling to sprinting. Now I could run through not just one world, but many. Live not just one life, but hundreds.
He wants to marry her. He'll have to come to Patron.
And how about a nice spoiled cousin who bullies him all the time, right? What if these two characters fell in love? What if these two characters fought to the death? Show me him standing up against an entire army single-handed and drove most of the race before hopping out to run the last one. That's a little bit different. True story, by the way. Somebody went on a trip or somebody came into town. There's your plots. I took that big old forehead and just crashed every brick, board, and brother in the house. Let me tell you a story.
Hello and welcome to what will likely be our last story stream, at least for a while. The regular show is kind of shutting down for now. And so we decided to just have fun on our last one. So this one is titled The Good Guys. Guys being used in more of its gender neutral form because we have more than just men on here. But these are just our favorites. These are just really amazing, cool people from history. And so yes, if the theme seems wandering, it's because we are doing whatever we feel is going to be fun.
Correct.
And so that is the theme. The true theme tonight is whatever we feel like. So, Mike, what do you want to start with?
All right. We are going to start with Araminta Ross.
Araminta?
Araminta. They called her Minty.
I was about to say, it sounds like an Italian dessert. I'll have the Araminta, please.
It kind of does. Minty. Okay. Araminta Ross is, or was rather, she has passed away, the first female general of the United States.
Nice.
So, where does she start out? She is born into slavery.
Oh, dang.
1820. She is born to Harriet and Benjamin Ross. They are enslaved people in Maryland.
In Maryland?
In Maryland. Yeah.
Okay.
Maryland is in an interesting place because it's
Well, first of all, it's in a northern place, is it not?
Somewhat. It's sort of a battleground state for what's going on. About 50% of the black people in Maryland are slaves.
Okay, so about...
It's in a very weird place.
All right.
Like marriages between like enslaved people and free people is common, but they're not legally binding, and like there's lots of escaping and people trying to... It's really awful.
See, that sounds so weird.
It's really bad.
And
that's going to be
Minty
kind of a
born.
theme. And into this, Minty is born. Not too long after she is born, her owners get divorced. One of them takes the mother and some of the children. The other takes the father and some of the children.
Slavery
and
was
split
so
up.
horrifying.
It's really bad. And there's going to be a lot of this, right? And the ever-present threat is being sold downriver into the Deep South. Because in Maryland, you've at least got some chance of escaping or earning your freedom or what have you. Once you get down into the Deep South, all of that unfairness just compounds and is nearly insuperable. Not impossible. There were still some rare cases, but for the most part, if you get sold down the river, things have gotten hopeless. So, Minty, at the age of 6 years old, her owner starts renting her out to surrounding people to do various odd jobs. In these jobs, she is described as being hopelessly stupid.
Okay.
And is generally beaten and abused, and every 6 months or so, she is sent back at death's door.
Oh.
It's a very bad childhood. At the age of 13, right? After this very awful childhood that leaves her physically and emotionally scarred. At the age of 13,
Great story, Mike.
yeah, oh no, it's not great. Anything touching on slavery is going to be just pure nightmare fuel. So when she's 13, one of the slaves at the place that she's working is caught trying to leave the property. They drag him back and have Minty help tie him up to be beaten. She messes it up, and the guy springs up and runs for it. The foreman, in trying to stop this guy from escaping, picks up a lead weight, throws it at the guy, but instead hits Minty in the head and fractures her skull.
What?
So, again, things are not going great. She is in a coma for several days. As happens with a skull fracture.
Yes.
She's in a coma for several days. This will plague her the rest of her life. She has seizures, splitting headaches, hypersomnia. It's a pretty serious detriment. Because of this, her owner starts trying to sell her down the river. Because she's mostly useless to him, he's shattered her head. He's trying to get some money out of her, and to sweeten the deal, he's trying to throw in her brothers as well and get them sold down the river. So Minty comes to, learns about all this, and she is praying for him to have a change of heart. That does not seem to be working. So she changes her tactic and prays that he will die.
Aha. God is an assassin.
And he drops dead.
Oh.
He dies
Queen Isabella had a similar thing.
Oh, really?
She also prayed some people dead. One of her
Guys,
suitors.
Don't pray people dead.
Stop praying people dead.
I don't think it. I think this was a coincidence. But just to be sure, I don't recommend it.
Theologically, that's some real murky ground there.
So, she believes between this occurrence and the fact that her skull fracture has caused occasional hallucinations and vivid dreams, she believes that she is responsible for this man's death and is stricken with debilitating guilt over murdering this man by way of God.
So yeah, don't pray people to death. It might work.
Yeah. So up until this point, her life has read kind of like the beginning of like a true crime documentary.
Yeah.
Where it's like abuse, traumatic head injury. You expect her to start like, you know, making belts out of human skin or whatever at some point in here.
This is serial killer road right here.
But here she turns and is like, no, I've got to be the good guy.
Redemption
from here on out.
I love it.
I can't pray any more people to death. And I've got to make sure that I don't go to hell. Because probably my master is there waiting for me. So, this dramatically changes her personality. She is now extremely devout. But also, she's developed something of a feeling for her own volition, right? She prayed a man to death. That bespeaks a certain amount of power, doesn't it?
It does.
So she starts trying to work her way to freedom. She actually she manages to get loaned out to a guy who's fairly liberal as slave owners go, who lets her like start taking jobs on the side and putting away money. She actually manages to buy a team of oxen that allow her to go out and earn more money. And of course, her owners are taking most of it, but she's starting to put some money aside. Her parents actually end up getting manumitted.
Oh.
Specifically, they are freed. Her dad first is freed in his owner's will. But the lawyer executing the will just ignores that part. And her father spends 10 years as a slave after being freed in this man's will. Before finally somebody looks into it and says, oh, we should probably tell that guy that he doesn't have to do this anymore.
Lawyers.
They find out about that, and Minty goes and gathers some of this money that she's accumulated, pays an investigator to go look into her mother and see if there's something similar with her. Turns out, exactly the same situation. She had been manumitted, but then just pulled back into the system because there weren't, T's crossed and I's dotted. So her parents managed to get free. But her and her brothers are still stuck. But she has been spending all of this time out working. She's learned woodcraft and knows how to find her way around. She convinces her brothers to run north with her to Philadelphia. They actually end up chickening out. But she takes off and establishes herself in Philadelphia. But after she gets there, after a little while, she decides, I need to go back and get some people. So she starts making these trips. She goes in and sets up these kind of safe houses around where she can take people, and she starts going into the South using her knowledge of the woods and the territory and how to move stealthily to go in and start rescuing slaves and moving them north on the Underground Railroad.
Nice.
Also worth noting, she has changed her name. She got married to a free man while she was actually still a slave. She got married to one John Tubman. And decided that while she was at it, she didn't love the name Araminta, and so took her mother's name, Harriet.
I love this story so much.
Tubman.
Harriet Tubman.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, you got me.
I did! So, this is Harriet Tubman. She is incredible, right? Despite all of the, horrific health stuff that she's got going on. Also, she's only 5 feet tall.
Oh.
She is this little woman, but she is incredibly strong. She's basically a ninja. And so she starts pulling people out, right? On the Underground Railroad. She becomes very famous. And they start kind of publicizing this whole Underground Railroad thing. She uses, when she is on a mission, she uses the codename Moses. That's how she introduces herself. She often dresses as a man or as an old lady as well. Also, she carries a gun. Because after her brothers chickened out, she brought a gun, and if somebody thought about turning back, she would cock it and put it to their head. Because no one compromises the Underground Railroad. She never actually shot anybody, but nobody turned back either.
Tired of this crap.
So a lot of people, even abolitionists, assume that Moses, who is making all of these missions and stuff, is secretly a white person, because they can't believe that a black woman of all people is really doing all of this. On top of that, the myth kind of grows over time that the Underground Railroad is like sympathetic white people, And it's not. It's mostly freed slaves. So she makes 13 missions into the South, rescues between 70 and 80 people.
Nice.
Besides training up to 50 more. So it's not thousands, right? But it's a lot of people for one woman with a gun.
Right.
So she makes a name for herself as among abolitionist circles as like, oh, look, here's this lady, and she escaped. She actually starts having to go all the way to Canada after the Fugitive Slave Act is passed, which says that even if you escape to the north, they can still come get you. So she starts taking people all the way to Canada. Remember, this is a woman whose skull was fractured as a child and now has like seizures and debilitating headaches and hallucinations and all these things. Okay, the Civil War happens. Okay, this is where things get crazy. The Civil War happens, and she has a buddy from her abolitionist circles that comes to her and says, hey, I've heard rumors about you. I have $100. Would you be willing to take this money and go set up a network of spies in the South? And she says, yes, absolutely. I'm happy to be helpful.
I already have
Up to this point, she was actually kind of yes. She was helping. She was a nurse, which in the Civil War was a whole lot of like scooping up piles of severed limbs and stuff.
Right.
But she now starts working on the side, running this enormous spy ring and bands of guerrilla fighters among all of her contacts in the South. She is instrumental in the capture of Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, nice.
Based on that success, she goes and says, hey, I want some ships and men for my own operation. And they've been so impressed with her that they're like, okay, fine. Here's 300 guys and some warships. What are you planning on doing? And so she takes these ships and she goes, so it's in South Carolina. She goes up the, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Combahee River, which is in the middle of all of these plantations. And the South knows that it's vulnerable, so they've set up sea mines in this river all over the place. So the Union hasn't been able to touch it. But Harriet knows where all the mines are. Right? Her spies were watching when they were put in.
They're right there.
They're right there. Also, she knows where all the troops in the area are. Also, she has sent in infiltrators to advise all of the slaves that they're coming and that they should take whatever they can and meet them at the riverbank.
Oh, wow.
So she just pulls her ships up and just like do around all of the traps and just shows up and loads up 750 freed people. Woo. Gathers up all of the goods and rice
didn't go
and
empty-handed.
jewels and livestock and just everything they can get their hands on, because she already knows there's nobody here to defend it. I know exactly where all of your troops are. They can't get here in time. Give me everything. I'm leaving. Gathers up all this stuff, rescues 750 people, steals thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of goods and supplies, and just pieces out back down the river. Once again, just avoiding all of their traps, all of their defenses, like they weren't even there. And she keeps doing this. Right?
Oh.
That's the only one that we have really good records of, because she was actually illiterate. Right? She wasn't able to read or write. So we don't actually have records on most of the stuff that she did. We only know what she told somebody and they then wrote down. But for the most part, she took these secrets to her grave. But she goes and does all of these raids, and they're wildly successful. Her spies are immaculate. They're unstoppable, right? There is never even the slightest hitch in her operations. And the northern newspapers start running these stories about the Union's first female general.
Nice.
Right? And she becomes a celebrity. A lot of people don't like this, as you can imagine.
Because people are stupid.
Because people are stupid. People are awful. The war ends, and she goes to ask for a pension because she served in the military,
Yeah.
right? We have very clear records. We have newspaper articles about her serving in the military. I would like a pension, please. $25 a month. And they say, no. She says, why not? She said, well, because you are a woman, women can't enlist. And she says, but I did enlist. I was a nurse even before I was your most effective spy. And say, well, no. What follows is 30 years of trying to get her pension.
Ah, man.
30 years before she finally is able to just get the money. And in the meantime, she has been doing all of this humanitarian work, trying to take care of all of these freed enslaved people, right? All of these people that now are, right, that the government is not helping, who now need places to stay and need education and need medical care. And so she is just giving away everything that she can get her hands on, so much so that she's like, that she sometimes doesn't even have a place to stay. At one point, she gets conned by these guys, trusting that because she's such a trusting and devout woman, these guys come and offer her this deal. And she says, oh, yeah, absolutely. I trust you, but I don't have any money. And she goes around to all of her friends and says, hey, I need some money for this business investment thing. And most of her friends say, well, that sounds like a scam. I don't think you should do it. Until finally this guy comes forward and is like, oh, yeah, no, I'll lend you the money. She takes it. The con men take the money, like literally hit her over the head, leave her bound and gagged in the woods.
Oh. Death to those guys.
She loses the money, and the guy that fronted her the money claims falsely that she offered her house and the land it's on as collateral. So,
jerk.
Yeah. So she's having a hard time. So all of the money that she's making from like speaking engagements and like having her memoirs written and sold and like all of this like fundraising type stuff is going directly to helping people.
Nice.
So much so that she is like about to lose everything.
Broke herself.
And they won't give her $25 a month, which is like, that's not a general's pension.
No.
That is your standard enlisted man pension. They won't give her that. It takes 30 years before they finally give her $20 a month for her late husband's pension.
Oh.
Son of a... Dang it. She's eventually able to... She makes kind of a business deal. She's getting on in life, and she realizes that there are no retirement homes for black people. You are expected to work until you die if you're black. Black people aren't allowed into nursing homes or retirement homes. You just, there's nothing. You're taken care of by family. If you don't have family, you die. And so she actually sets up the first retirement home for black people in the United States, and lives and works there until she passes away in her early 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's an incredible human being.
That is an incredible human being. So, fast forward 100 years. I believe she passes away in 1913.
Okay.
It's 2014. President Obama gets a letter from this girl suggesting that they put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. And it gets a huge amount of support.
Oh, from me as well.
Yeah,
by the
obviously.
way.
Yeah.
Because Andrew Jackson?
Because who is on the 20
Andrew
bill right now?
Jackson?
Andrew Jackson.
Oh.
The genocidal maniac.
Oh. Hate that guy.
Right? Trail of Tears, murdered a man on the White House lawn. That Andrew Jackson
Oh, man.
is currently on the 20. So they were able to get a resolution passed to get Harriet Tubman on the 20,
Oh, nice.
with the stipulation that Andrew Jackson be moved to the back.
What? No.
Yes!
No.
Harriet Tubman on the front. Right? Abolitionist, first female general of the Union, ran the Underground Railroad, the American Moses, and just flip it over, and you got Andrew Jackson, the architect of the Trail of Tears. Anyway, so that's the plan, but it was
What a horrible
supposed to be it was supposed to be implemented by 2020. Right now, it has been moved back to at least 2028. That was the last I'd heard anyway. These things can
why
change.
Is everything stupid?
But keep an eye on the news. Maybe we'll hear something about that being accelerated. But ladies and gentlemen, Harriet Tubman, the American Moses, minty, all grown up, and just taking no prisoners, kicking butt, taking names.
Nice.
What a woman.
All right. I'm actually going to take a moment and talk about President Obama.
Please do.
Though, not really. We really try to keep it about dead people here. We don't like talking about the living. Gets messy with the living.
It's simpler this way, trust me.
It is simpler, absolutely. But, 2010 to 2012, right? Barack Obama is president.
Yes.
Joe Biden is vice president.
Okay.
So if Barack Obama died, Biden would become president, right? So Joe Biden was first in line.
Right. This is how I understand it.
Right? Who is second in line?
After Biden, you mean?
Yeah, after vice president, who is second in line?
Whoever the Speaker of the House was at that time.
Speaker of the House. I think Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi?
But somebody would have to check.
I'd believe that.
Though, still not. These are still both living people, so not on my radar.
Okay.
But all you constitutional scholars out there, who was third in line?
Third in line, I believe, moves to the President pro tempore of the Senate.
That is absolutely right.
Who I also have no idea who that would be. I don't know who that is now.
I think it's Patrick Leahy.
Meaningless to me at the moment.
Not the point. We're talking about 2010 to 2012, who I absolutely know who the president pro tempore of the Senate was. Daniel Inouye, the senator from Hawaii, having been the senator from Hawaii for 50 years.
Okay, guys, this guy's cool. You're gonna like this.
Yeah, who was the first Asian American to be elected to Congress.
Really?
Absolutely. And yeah,
Holy smokes.
was only in Congress, I think, 3 years before moving to the Senate. Never lost an election. And was in the Senate
Cool.
for 53 years. Now, it's hard for me because on the one hand, I'm like, yes, that's so amazing. But I'm actually very, very much in favor of term limits.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that goes, ugh, gross. But like, since it's Daniel Inouye, I'm kind of okay with it.
But it's Daniel Inouye, so which is always how these things go. You're like, yes, all of these are corrupt monsters, except for that guy that I like. So,
anyways, let's talk a little bit about Daniel Inouye.
yes, please.
All
Oh,
right.
man.
So he is a Japanese American born in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
and is 17 or so when Pearl Harbor hits.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed.
Oh boy. Yeah. I didn't know he was that young. Holy smokes.
Yes, just a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Is right in the thick of it. He was already volunteering with the Red Cross, so when the bombs started dropping, people being wounded, he's right there helping people out.
Yeah.
Now, after this, of course, comes the great internment, where I had it written down here, over 112,000 men, women, and children of Japanese descent were put into internment camps.
Yes.
Everywhere except Hawaii. Were you aware that they were left out?
Yes. I didn't know this. I don't really know the specifics of the why and how.
So essentially in the continental U.S., yeah, anyone of Japanese descent was locked up. And
Yeah.
the vast majority of them were American citizens, by the way.
100%. Yeah. Not 100% of them
Yes.
were. I
100% he knew.
yes, I knew that 100%,
Yes.
and am 100% upset about it.
Yes. In Hawaii, such a large portion of the population was Japanese American, they decided not to go through with it because it would just absolutely devastate the economy. And so like, it's fine. It's fine.
Wow, what a
So where Pearl Harbor happened,
Oh.
no internment. The rest of the continental U.S., which was never in any danger, internment.
what a cynical reason to do the right thing.
I know. It's so weird.
Wow.
Anyway, so you have young Daniel Inouye and a whole bunch of other Japanese people who want to prove their patriotism. I have read articles and journal entries and stuff from people in that thing, and they felt that many of them felt like they had a debt towards America, right? That they had emigrated because things weren't going well in Japan. They came to America. America had taken them in, and they felt like they owed America something. And so, yeah, these were people who were very anxious to prove, like, no, we'll fight for you.
Yeah, and there's a certain sense of betrayal there as well. There's the old country to which we have, some, to which we have traditions
Our
in,
ancestors,
and our ancestors,
came from.
and we come here and we're trying to make a life, and now we've got you guys attacking and committing all these war crimes and just being monstrous. It is, besides wanting to help their country, there's also this sense of betrayal from Japan.
Yeah. Anyway, so there are, and for a long time, they are not allowed to join the army.
Yes.
Finally, they agree to create one regiment, the 442nd, that is purely Japanese American.
Mm-hmm.
And they still aren't going to send them to the Pacific Theater.
Right.
Right. And so they have them go attack in Italy. There's a lot of German things going on there still, even though the Allies have largely taken. But they're there and fighting. One of their first things is going rescuing. There was this battalion of soldiers that had been completely surrounded by the Germans, and they send the 442nd to go and rescue them. And they go and punch through the German line, rescue about half of the battalion. I forget the exact numbers, but they rescued about 200 of them and lost about 800 doing it.
Ugh.
And it was just this absolute bloodbath. Inoya's platoon was one of the luckiest. Like, they came out with the least amount of casualties because they only lost 2/3 of their men. It was bad.
Yikes.
But also established the 442nd as this absolute butt kicker regiment, like unstoppable, unwavering, courage beyond compare.
Yeah, broadly speaking, if you have 10% casualties,
Literally decimated.
you
vocabulary
have been
fans
literally
out there.
decimated, and generally speaking, by the time you have hit 10% casualties, you have broken and run away. That is kind of the order of how these things go. You don't stick around and keep fighting if 50, 60, 70% of you have died. That's just not that's not
The 442nd does, Mike.
yeah. So yeah, that is beyond exceptional.
Yes. It was bravery beyond compare. They proved themselves over and over and over again. One of the most decorated regiments in the entire war, and that was with vast amounts of medals being withheld from them because of rampant racism.
Yes.
So even with that handicap, still one of the most decorated regiments because of stuff like that.
I remember the most decorated. Am I? We'll have to look that up.
Might have been the most eventually. I don't think at the time.
I would believe that as well.
But yeah, they did go back and give a whole bunch of,
checks out.
especially medals of honor, were largely withheld from that regiment until later, and they kind of gave a whole bunch. Like, oh wait,
Oh, these, yeah.
yeah.
No, you're right. You did earn these.
Anyways,
Oh dear. Okay.
but also worth noting that Daniel Inouye only had one arm, and before we move on, we must absolutely tell the story about how he lost that arm. So they are walking along, and all of a sudden are ambushed by not one, not two, but 3 German machine guns.
That's a lot.
He is almost immediately shot
Ouch.
in the stomach.
Ouch.
Yeah. And continues to crawl towards this first machine gun embankment, manages to throw some grenades in, takes that one out. Starts crawling towards a second, takes that one out with his Tommy gun. That's right, he is wielding a Thompson. Thompson submachine gun. And takes out the second one. Starts crawling towards the third. Gets to within about 10 yards. Okay? Has the grenade, pulls the pin, goes to throw it, locks eyes with a German soldier who just stood up with a rifle-propelled grenade, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The guy shoots, hits his elbow, and it explodes. Most of his arm is detached at this point. Because of, I don't know, nerves or whatever, the arm remains clenched, right?
Yeah.
His men start coming to try to rescue him. He tells them to stay back because he doesn't know when that hand is going to relax and the grenade go off. In fact, I wrote down his exact quote. He says, "It was clenched in a fist that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore."
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh. There's a mental image.
Anyway, meanwhile, the German who just shot him is reloading as fast as he can. So Daniel reaches over, pries the grenade out of his own dead hands. I gotta pry it out of my cold dead fingers. I'll pry it out of my own cold dead fingers. It gets the grenade free, throws it before the guy manages to lift his rifle again, takes out that one. His men coming, there's still firing going on. He gets hit in the leg.
Ouch.
So gets shot again, falls unconscious. 9 hours later, they managed to get him to a field hospital.
9 hours?
9 hours. Had to transport him quite a ways. And they make the call. No, we're just going to dive right into this. We're going all the way. At which point they decide there's no saving the arm. It needs to come off. By the way, how much morphine has he had? Oh, we don't know. We gave him a few shots, here and there to help with the pain. Well, we don't really know for sure, so we can't risk giving him any anesthetic.
No.
His arm is then amputated without any anesthesia at all. Whew.
Don't like that. Don't like
anyways, it had been his childhood dream to be a surgeon.
Don't
obviously
tell me that.
Was ruined with that, and so instead he started to study government and civics and things like that, and entered politics, and served as either congressman or senator for the next 53 years, never losing an election.
Yeah.
And between 2010 and 2012 was third in line for the presidency. He died in 2012 was why that stopped, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I figured.
Anyway, but yeah,
Wow.
just an amazing guy.
Yeah. Man, I was familiar with parts of that story.
Well, there's
But
some
holy
more.
smokes. We did have an update here. Thanks to Will for grabbing that fact for us. For their valor, the 442nd Regiment has been recognized as the most decorated unit in American history. Wow. They earned more than 18,000 awards, including 9,500 Purple Hearts, 5,200 Bronze Stars, 588 Silver Stars, 52 Distinguished Service Crosses, 7 Distinguished Unit Citations, and 1 Congressional Medal of Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the 442nd. Man.
Chills.
Well done, guys.
But and it's mentioned the whole term limits thing. I'm still very, very much in favor of term limits, but yeah. Daniel Inouye was amazing. All right, let's see if we can get through some fast ones. We got a little bit of time left, and we want to go through much.
Yeah, we are going to go over time today. I guarantee it. But let's talk about Robert Kerr McLaren, better known as Jock.
Jock McLaren.
Jock McLaren.
Let's do this.
Jock McLaren is born in 1902 in Scotland.
Aye.
Oi! And he keeps this thick Scottish burr his entire life.
Nice.
Right? He is, we don't know how young, when he lies about his age to enlist and serve in World War I. We know very little about his service because he wouldn't talk about it because it was all illegal. So when the war ended, he was 17.
Oh.
Yeah.
Underage by the end of it.
Yes.
Wow.
So he doesn't
just a
talk.
child.
He was a child. He is a wee bairn when he goes off to serve in World War I. Lies about his age, serves in World War I, moves to Australia, and works as a veterinarian.
Okay.
He is 39.
So he's a vet.
I hate you, I think. Yes. He is a veteran and a veterinarian.
I love
Okay.
wordplay.
So 1941, World War II is now well underway. Australia is getting involved. He signs up again, but he is 39 years old. The limit for service is 40. His birthday is coming up. He lies about his age again to once again join the army.
Just cutting on both ends.
Yes. So he lies to get into the Scottish army to serve in World War I. He lies again to serve in the Australian army in World War II. He is sent to Singapore.
Okay.
He arrives. Singapore immediately falls. Like, immediately. And he
Welcome,
and
we're done.
everyone else are captured as prisoners of war.
Lame.
He does not like this.
Because it's lame.
Because it's lame. Within a couple of weeks, he has escaped. Right? Him and like a couple of buddies, they go under the wire, as they say. They get out and they escape. And they go and they have heard, don't trust. This is in so this is in Malaysia, right? And he's been told, do not trust the Malay. They are largely loyal isn't really the word, but cooperative with the Japanese. Do not trust them. Only trust the Chinese guerrillas that are hiding out in the jungle. So they go and start hanging out with the Chinese guerrillas, and they see some awful stuff.
Ooh.
Because we're not going to get into it here, but the Japanese did some real bad things during World War II, especially to the Chinese.
Yeah, it was real bad.
Real bad.
There's your nightmare fuel right there.
So he makes his way towards Kuala Lumpur, and he's being kind of passed back and forth between these Chinese guerrilla groups, and they're training him and kind of teaching him about the terrain, how to stay alive, even though they're kind of having a hard time of it themselves. And he is seeing real bad stuff. They get almost to Kuala Lumpur, and they hear that there is this Malay policeman who is sympathetic. They go talk to him. He says, yeah, I'm going to go get some help. And he comes back with a bunch of his buddies, and they round them up and give them to the Japanese in exchange for a reward. Luckily, they're brought into this prison camp, and the Japanese usually, if you escaped and they caught you, they would just shoot you.
Yeah.
Or stab you, or cut, or chop your head off. They bring them in, they stand them up against the wall, raise the rifles, the officer raises his sword, and puts it away. And sends them to their cells. The next day, brings them out, does it again.
Weird mind games going on here.
They end up doing this, depending on the source, 5 or 6 times. That they bring them out to execute them, and then change their mind. It might have been, it turns out, Jock ends up talking to this guy. He sees that he's wearing this sash. And he's like, I recognize that. It means you served in World War I. I served in World War I as a child. And the guy's like, well, actually, no. My father served, and I am permitted to wear his sash. Sorry. I'm permitted to wear his sash. But, you know, you served and my dad served, and you're real old like my dad. So okay.
You're real old like my dad.
So they let him live. This and send him to Sandakan, which is on Borneo, and it's this great big prison camp there. And he joins what is called the DIT Club. How's your Morse code?
Actually, pretty good.
Yeah? What is a DIT in Morse code? Just one.
Like the Morse code for it?
What is the letter? Just one DIT.
Dot?
A dot. Yeah.
E.
E for escape.
Oh,
Yes!
well, I was overthinking there.
You really were. They were not subtle. They were like, we got to get out of here.
I thought you were going to have me like spell out DIT and Morse code. I was ready to go.
It's the DIT Club.
Oh, for
DIT,
heaven's
which
sake.
is E, which is escape. So he gets together his buddies, right? They gather up a group of guys, and they actually climb through the latrines. It's not, okay, it's almost as gross as it sounds. They climb through the latrines and escape out into the jungle, leaving behind a bunch of other people in Sandakan. It turns out, right, he keeps trying to get back there to rescue these guys. Sandakan ends up becoming the site of the Sandakan Death March,
Thought it sounded familiar.
where 2,434 Allied prisoners of war are marched to death.
Ugh.
There are 6 survivors.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So he and his buddies escape and keep trying to be like, we should go back and get everybody out of Sandakan, and everyone that they talk to says, nah, it's fine. They'll be fine.
It will not be fine.
It will not be fine. So we'll get that tragic side note kind of out of the way here. He and his buddies go and try to figure out what to do. And up to this point, their plan has always been go south, try to get to Java, try to get like down towards India, and try to meet up with Allied forces there. But they meet up with this local guy who actually is a Malaysian police officer who is sympathetic to the cause, named Karam. And he tells them, no, you're going the wrong direction. You need to go north. Japan is north, yes, but so is the Philippines. And when the Philippines fell, a bunch of American forces stayed there and have been operating as guerrilla fighters there. So if you go up to the Philippines, you can tag up with them. They'll help you out. So they do so. They make a dugout canoe and proceed to paddle. Like, if you look at the map, this is a long way. I don't actually have the numbers, but it's like 700 something miles that they paddle between Borneo and the Philippines. They get to, I am awful at the lightning round thing.
Yeah, you're just the worst.
Yes, I am. They get to the island of Tawi-Tawi in the Philippines, and they are finally able to meet up with American forces there, who say, well, technically we're not supposed to, like, bring on Australians. Like, you're sort of like, we'd have to figure out and make sure you're not deserters or whatever. But we've been fighting behind enemy lines for like years now. Yeah, welcome to the team. It's going to be great.
Why not?
So they come, some of them actually are able to get back to Australia, but Jock is jonesing for some revenge because he's seen some things, and before he goes home, he really needs to make sure that the Japanese suffer
Oh boy.
for what he's seen. So he starts working with these guerrilla fighters, and they start out by just setting up watch posts around the island. And when they see a Japanese ship, they will radio to Allied submarines to come sink that ship. Then, when any survivors from that ship get to shore, there are Philippine guerrillas there with machetes to hack them to death.
Oh, oh my!
It's really kind of rough,
Oh dang!
right? But Jock is invaluable because a lot of the Filipinos resent Americans. Because remember, the U.S. there was on our first episode we talked about like the Moro Rebellion and the Philippine American War, where like we did concentration camps and all of these war crimes, and it was
There was a lot of
horrible
bad
and awful.
stuff.
There was a lot of bad stuff, so they really tend to resent Americans, but they don't care about Australians, and
Not
they don't
many
care
people
about
do.
Scotsmen, right? So here's McLaren with his thick Scottish accent, and they're like, could you maybe be our middleman and talk to these guys and kind of direct their like machete hacking to death efforts? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, I'd be delighted to. So they start with that, taking down all these guys. Later, they move to the island of Mindanao, which is a much bigger island, a lot more activity, right? Jock now has some experience. He knows what he's doing. He's kind of gotten more familiar with the language and the culture. They go to Mindanao, and Mindanao is a mess because you've got the Japanese, you've got American forces that are still leading guerrilla efforts, you've got the locals who are still fighting, and you've got the Moros. Remember them with like the iron bands to stop the like
psychos.
Yeah, these guys are nuts, and they don't want anything to do with anybody. They'll just kill anyone that comes into their land. They
Kill everybody.
Yeah, because they're like, why should we support the Japanese? Like, they're just first the Americans came and were the Spanish were oppressing us, and then the Americans were oppressing us. Now the Japanese are here and they want to oppress us. Tell you what, we'll just kill anyone that comes anywhere close to us, except for Jock, who weirdly they really like. Like, this guy is awesome. So somehow he gets the Moros to join the fight on their side.
Oh, dang.
So he starts leading a guerrilla band of Moros.
Oh.
Yeah.
Death Squad.
Death Squad. And so he starts getting a bit more serious about his raids. Okay, now we're going fast. Actually, no, we're not. 1944.
I don't even believe you at this point, Mike.
He's been fighting for a few years. He's been getting sick a lot. So his commanding officer tells him to go hang out in the woods with his Moro buddies and recuperate. He spends that time making moonshine because, of course, he did. But he was sick, and he would continue to get sick from malaria and dysentery and stuff his whole life. But he gets real sick, and he goes, uh-oh, that's my appendix. I'm gonna die if I don't get to a doctor. The only problem is there's no doctors. Also, the Japanese have a bounty of like 70,000 pesos on his head.
Oh, dang.
He can't go anywhere near a city or a doctor or anything. He is on his own out in the middle of the jungle with a bunch of these guerrilla fighters. So he's like, well, I am a veterinarian. I have poked around in some animals in my day. And I've got this kid here who went to a couple of medical classes once. He hoped to be a doctor someday. I'm sure he can stand the sight of blood. Let's do this.
Basically qualified.
I have a rice bowl that we can boil instruments in, 2 spoons.
Oh, no.
Some scissors.
Oh, good. Because you need at least 2 spoons.
And then the last implement, depending on the source that you're looking at, was either a pocket knife or a straight razor.
Hoping straight razor, but
yeah. And then to suture himself up, he has palm fibers. For anesthetic, he has his
I was
moonshine,
about to say moonshine.
which upon further contemplation, he decides not to use.
Well, you gotta have a clear head
You got to have a clear head when you're poking around in your own guts
with spoons.
with spoons. Yeah, because what he needs to do is cut himself open and then use the spoons to pry apart his muscles and hold them open. So that's the kid's job, is to hold these two spoons holding his muscles apart so that he can go in with the scissors
Oh,
and
man.
snip the appendix off, which he keeps, by the way. It takes him 4.5 hours to find it.
Oh, no. I guess we never did ask if he was a good veterinarian.
No, we did not. It takes him 4.5 hours to finally find the thing, snip it off, and then is almost immediately thereafter, right? He sews himself up with palm fibers. The Japanese are almost immediately on their way.
Oh, no.
He takes off. I know! With freshly from surgery, he takes off bringing just his moonshine and his appendix in a jar. A couple of months go by for him to recover before he begins the most epic phase of his career as a guerrilla fighter with the introduction of the Bastard.
Okay.
The Bastard is a whaling ship that he and his buddies commandeer and are able to strap a mortar and a machine gun to.
So he's gone just full pirate at this
He's gone
point.
full pirate and begins ambushing Japanese shipping.
Oh, man.
Not kidding. He goes full pirate. So he and his buddies, right, his like Moro buddies,
The Moro buddies and the Scottish-Australian pirate.
yes, are raiding supply caches. They're attacking ships. They're radioing in submarine attacks. They would go into Japanese ports in broad daylight because they knew that no one would expect an attack at that time, especially not from a little whaling boat.
Because it'd be
So they
insanity.
just kind of like put. They're doing the Steamboat Willie thing into the middle of the port, and suddenly it's mortar fire everywhere. It's spraying down everything with machine guns, and then just out of the harbor again. He proceeds to just wreak unholy havoc on Japanese supply lines, before finally being brought back to the Australian side. Remember, he's been fighting for the Americans through this whole time. Finally, the Australians bring him back. By the way, he had multiple opportunities to go home. He said no.
Clearly.
Because I am now 42, 43. They would make me stay home. I am too old to be in active duty. I've aged out. I can't go home. They finally get him to go home. And he's like, all right, fine. But then they bring him back because they're trying to take Borneo. They're like, okay, we need somebody that knows the area. We just need you to be a guide. You're going to parachute in, get some intel, radio it back to us. Don't worry. We're sending you in with a team of commandos. They will keep you safe.
My heroes.
My heroes. They parachute in. One of the commandos lands directly in a Japanese ambush.
Oh, no.
One of them lands and breaks his leg.
Oh, dang.
One of them lands and is lost.
Wait, what? Just
lost in
We
the
don't
jungle.
know what
has
happened to
no
them.
idea where he is.
Oh.
Their supplies fall into a Japanese camp, including their radio.
Oh. Oh,
Doc
man.
gathers up the lost commando and the injured commando and proceeds to lead them on a 3-man raid of the island
And attack.
and attack, stealing weapons, stealing supplies, gathering intel, and sneaking and fighting their way through Japanese lines to deliver their intel in person.
Oh man.
He's so very, very epic. Tragically, the war ends, and he is forced to go back to his veterinary ways. By all accounts, he is very restless. He goes back to being a veterinarian for a while. Then
We can't
actually
imagine he was
buys-
a very good veterinarian.
Probably not a great veterinarian. Yeah, he's a veterinarian for a while, and then he buys a coffee plantation, ends up dying in a car accident in his 50s.
Okay.
Right? But man, what do you even say about the skipper of the Bastard? Man, that guy was cool. Man, he was cool.
Oh man. Okay. Well,
Jock McLaren, ladies and
Jock
gentlemen.
McLaren.
Good
Excellent.
job, Jock.
Man, you're bad at telling short stories.
I know it.
Just the worst.
It's okay. After today, you don't need to worry about it.
All right. Let's talk about some Churchills.
Okay. I know one of those. I know two of those.
Yes. And how were they related?
I have no idea.
They weren't.
Cool.
Not even a little.
Excellent.
There's just one I kind of want to bring up, and that's Winston Churchill. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we mostly on this stream spend a lot of time on more of the obscure that people might not know as well. I feel like Winston is fairly well known, but man, that guy was awesome. I feel like he just got, frankly, screwed over so many times. He
don't
kept
know.
having these incredible ideas,
Mm-hmm.
would start to put them into effect, looking like it was going to work. Committees and bureaucracies and political garbage would get involved, delay it to the point where, and bloat it to the point where it is completely unworkable, kick him out of it, have the whole bloated mess fail, and then blame him.
I'm thinking specifically of the HMS Habakkuk. Although I'm sure there are more examples.
There were so many examples.
Kids, look up the HMS Habakkuk.
Yes, or listen to the word of the day, bulwark.
Bulwark is an appropriate word.
Yes. So we actually did that one on word of the day.
It's so cool. It's so cool, you guys.
Yeah. No. There was just a host of it. And yeah, this was somebody who was an idea man, but also just with the sheer energy to push it forward.
Yeah.
His father kind of lost his mind there towards the end. And so Winnie was mostly left with nothing. And so he and his mother just kind of like made their own way, built their own fortunes. She was just kind of like his pitchman back home while he would go. And this was literally his career plan. Join the military. And they kept trying to like push him towards like, go patrol this. They're like, no. He wanted war, he wanted front lines, and he wanted medals, dang it. And then he was going to write stories about those wars and sell them back home, where his mom is like talking him up and getting him just the highest fees. And that is like what his money was based off of.
And
Was
that's what
him-
he did?
Yes, that's what he did for years. Multiple wars, multiple fronts. He would go to the front, fight, right, sell. And like, that was his deal.
With his mom as his hype man.
Yes, as his agent back home.
Wow.
And it worked just so incredibly well and made him like one of the most popular people in England, which is why he was able to come back and just kind of enter politics.
Because everybody knew about him.
Everybody knew about him. Yes, his tales of daring do.
Okay.
Which, of course, popular, made him something of a controversial figure and ended up with political rivals, which led to all this other garbage. And there was one I actually just barely read about or listened to an audiobook on my way here where in World War I, he was really, they really messed him up over World War I. because he was the one who saw it coming, right? He's like, there is a war coming with Germany. It is going to be awful. It is going to last a really long time, and there's not going to be any winners. Everyone's going to lose, and we need to be ready for it. And yeah, just fought opposition the whole way. Finally got the fleet modernized. Said the one thing they can never take from you is when we needed them, you had the fleet ready. And it was like the only thing that saved them. But yeah, just all this stuff. And then when things didn't go well, they blamed him.
Of course.
And just over and over and over again. And, you know, there was actually one point where he went back where, again, he was blamed for the failure of this thing that they largely kicked him out of. And he went and was so depressed. And then he discovered painting. And he, like, painted gardens and stuff like that. And even won an art contest where it was submitted anonymously. And that made him feel all better. And he came back. And
oh, that's so very adorable.
It is.
Oh boy,
just this lion of a man.
That is a mental image. Just the barrel-chested, cigar-chomping bulldog guy just painting a garden.
Yeah, no, he was way into it, like to his death, and apparently was very, very good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Good on you, Winnie.
Cleared his mind, like rebuilt his self-esteem, and he came back and helped out with the rest of World War I, and did some stuff with his buddy Lawrence. T. Lawrence.
T.E. Lawrence?
You remember him? Yeah. Anyways,
Lawrence
friend of Churchill's.
of Arabia.
Yes, that guy.
That Lawrence.
Anyway, there was a whole bunch of stuff. We could do like 3 story streams on Winston Churchill alone, so I'm just going to leave it.
Okay.
I just want to bring him up because, yeah, he was awesome.
Because he cool.
Anyway, but we're going to talk about a different Churchill, not related in the slightest.
Okay.
Okay. And that is John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill, otherwise known as
Mad Jack.
Mad Jack, or Fighting Jack.
Or Fighting Jack, really?
Yes, also known as Fighting Jack.
Also known as Surfing Champion Jack.
Yes. Yep. Oh, man.
Male model Jack.
Male model, actor, instructor, surfer, was involved in steamboat refurbishing and motorcycle speed trials. He also built little RC cars. Or not RC cars, RC boats.
Wow.
Remote control boats.
Bagpiping Champion Jack.
Yes.
Do you know that? He was in bagpipe competitions.
World Championship level archer in Norway.
Wow.
Which plays into the whole thing.
Oh, also, bagpiping champion, not Scottish.
Some Scottish ancestor, though, through his father.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
But he was born in, Asia somewhere, right? Southeast
Sri
Asia.
Lanka, or
Sri
modern-day
Lanka?
Sri Lanka. At that point, I think it was under Hong Kong, actually. So, yeah. Born out there. Also, traveled around quite a bit. Got in the military, jumped into Burma. Once drove 1,500 miles on a motorcycle, at one point crashing into a water buffalo.
Ouch.
So, this guy's life is just so random. I love it so much. But yes, goes to Burma, comes back, fights in World War II, is there at Dunkirk. And you did have one person right. One of the most reassuring sights was the sight of Captain Churchill as he ran hither and thither with bow and arrow on the beach. Mad Jack Churchill was known for going into battle with a bow and arrow, a broadsword, and his bagpipes.
Yes.
He had developed a great love of the bagpipes and all things Scottish. Was often wearing a kilt. And yes,
As is proper.
Yes, one time right around Dunkirk, there were 5 Germans approaching, and he shot the first one by some reports through the heart at a fair distance before the guns opened up and took out the others. And people like, oh no, it was like in the neck or the shoulder, but like everyone who knows him, like, no, this guy was a world champion level archer. Like, nah, he probably hit him in the heart.
Probably hit where he wanted to hit.
Yeah. Still on record as the guy having the last confirmed kill by bow and arrow in the British military forces. Oddly enough, his eccentricities actually made him largely ineligible for promotion.
Yeah.
He was seen as a little bit too much of a madcap.
Yeah. It's worth noting, though, this guy was not like a mascot, right?
No.
He was not some like eccentric.
Well, he was absolutely
he was definitely
an eccentric.
that. But he wasn't just some like eccentric that
But he was
people
a very
tolerated.
effective leader.
He was like a full-on commando.
Oh, heck yeah.
That was involved in serious, high importance missions throughout the war.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just preferred a bow and arrow and a Scottish broadsword.
Not that he couldn't use guns as well. The sword he often used in leadership things. He would use it to inspire and direct his men.
Well, he said that an officer who appears without his sword is not fully dressed.
Yes. And yes, one time I believe in Italy, during the amphibious landings in Sicily and Salerno, they went out looking for Germans, found some, and he captured one with his sword.
Mm-hmm.
And then, kind of like using him as a meat shield, continued to walk into the town and capture other Germans, right? Surprise them, like have this guy, shout out. And so he's just like using him as his front to sneak into these places. Ha, capture them with the sword. Made them carry their own weapons back, just collected all the rifle bolts and put them in a bag that he carried. And yeah, ultimately captured 42 German soldiers.
Holy smokes.
And an 81 millimeter mortar team.
Dang.
And walked them back.
Ooh.
Son? He was indeed captured at one point. Mortar fire essentially got to the point where he was the last unwounded person. And so he popped out his bagpipes and played Will You Know Come Back Again.
Oh.
Sometimes seen as more like a funeral dirge, or it's thought by some that he was seeing if anyone else was in the area that might come and help him. That was his plea for help is, will you know, come back again.
Do you know the German side of that story?
There's a couple different reports on it. One was that actually delayed his capture.
Yes.
Because they thought it might have been some weird sonic attack.
Because Germans were not familiar with bagpipes.
Yes.
Your average German citizen did not hear bagpipes on a daily basis. So they hear this weird shrieking drone sound. And, ah!
She was known for it. But yeah.
It's so great. So
like
great.
I think one German report called the mournful sound of an unknown musical instrument. Anyway, ultimately they just lobbed like a grenade in there.
Yes. They blew
and
him
the
up.
shrapnel took him out. Anyway, they take him to a prison camp. He breaks out. Different prison camp, breaks out. Runs into the Americans. Ends up going to try to fight in the Pacific Theater. But at that point, the bombs have dropped. The war's over. He continues to go around. Ends up in a few different places, including Italy. Sorry, not Italy. Jerusalem.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was this convoy that had been of Jews that had been pinned down by the Arabs, and he walks in there unarmed and smiling. It was one of his catchphrases that people are less likely to shoot at you if you smile at them. And so he just like walks in. Apparently it just come from like some sort of like dress type dinner. So he's like all in his finery, kilt included, I believe, and just like
wow.
walks in. So they don't shoot him. Just kind of like, okay.
Gotta see how this plays out.
And yeah, he is able to go and talk to the people in this convoy and essentially say, do you want any help getting out of here? And they're like, no, we'll do it on our own. We've got resistance fighters coming, and nope, we'll do this on our own.
Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah,
but,
thanks for dropping by. And yeah, he offers it to each of the 3 different bus type things, and he walks away. Sadly, the convoy were all slaughtered. The resistance fighters did not show up in time. But he goes on to Jerusalem, and it helps evacuate anywhere from 500 to 800 patients, nurses, and doctors from a university and hospital there.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, he was just kind of all over the place.
Good man, Jack.
Yeah, he was just kind of always an eccentric, finally kind of settled down, but always, I'll tell one last story. He had this one little thing that he'd do as he was riding the train home back in Britain or whatever. At one point, he would get up, open the window, and throw his briefcase out, much to the confusion of all the passengers, and go back and ride the rest of the way. And finally, somebody asked him about it. He was throwing his briefcase into his own backyard, so he didn't have to carry it home from the train station.
That's awesome.
Anyway, and that is Mad Jack Churchill.
Mad Jack. Good man.
He was way cool. He was
Good
way
man.
cool. Oh, sorry. I missed some jobs, by the way. Newspaper editor in Kenya,
Oh, cool.
because why not? Yeah, but male model, actor, instructor in Australia, surfer, steamboat refurbisher. That guy was cool.
Steamboat refurbisher.
Yes.
Right. All right. Oh, all right. We're going to get a little bit intense. Since we're already way past time and we still have several more stories to get to, I'm going to try to keep this quick while doing it justice. Which means it'll probably take me 45 minutes. But
do what you can. Keep it snappy. Here we go.
Let's talk briefly about Witold Pilecki.
Yes, this also was done on a word of the day, I believe, for the word hardship.
Hardship would make sense.
Yes.
Witold Pilecki was he was a Polish cavalry officer. When World War II starts and the Nazis invade Poland, he finds himself in the middle of the most intense fighting, and almost all of his men are killed in the very first engagement.
Rough.
He skitters away, is assigned to a new position, and again, almost everyone but him is killed, and is just kind of chased by the Nazis into Poland. And as you are undoubtedly aware, and many of our viewers are probably aware, Poland falls very quickly. So Witold gets together with his buddy Jan, and they decide, okay, so Poland has fallen, but I think we need to keep fighting. So they form a resistance cell that they call the Secret Polish Army. Jan is in charge of administrating the group. Witold is in charge of recruiting, because everyone likes Witold. Everyone trusts Witold. He is often mistaken, interestingly, for a priest.
Okay.
Because he's this very reserved, quiet kind of a guy. One biography says that he gives the impression that he's holding something back. But he's this quiet, intense guy who inspires immediate loyalty from everyone that he meets. So he and Jan are working on building this resistance cell. But they run into a conflict because Jan, right, the Nazis have come in and they have broken the country into 3 groups. People with German heritage, ethnic Poles, and Jews. People with German ancestry are part of the Aryan race and are going to join our beautiful, wonderful society. Ethnic Poles are a subspecies of human and are fit only for hard labor, and Jews are worthy only of death.
Oh, man.
Poland has like 2 million Jewish people living in it at that time, so like 10 times the Jewish population of Germany.
Oh,
So Germany has popped up and nabbed this one of Europe's greatest concentrations of Jewish people. It has now taken control of. Vitold's buddy Jan is like, okay, we're going to start putting out a newsletter, and I think what we need to do is appeal to right-wing Polish nationalists, and we play on the anti-Semitism thing to get some sympathy. And Vitold says, that's what the Nazis want, though. Like, what you're describing is Nazism, but Polish.
Let's be better.
I'm not on board. So, much to Jan's irritation, Vitold goes behind his back to propose an alliance between their cell and the more well-established Polish underground resistance. And they do. They form this kind of alliance, and he comes back to Jan and says, hey, guess what? We're part of the overall group now. We can't do your kind of stupid anti-Semite thing. Jan is
so
very
sorry,
upset.
we won't be able to do your dumb idea.
Yeah, sorry, dude, but this
Our
how this
hands
is
are
gonna go.
tied.
And Jan is especially upset because it turns out everyone is loyal to Vitold. None of them are loyal to him. So they've now established this alliance with the rest of the underground. Jan goes to them and says, "Hey, you guys got any like suicide missions that you need like a volunteer for?" And they say, "Well, weird request, first of all, but actually, yes. The Nazis are building a labor camp by the town of Oswiecim. I think I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And they're calling it Auschwitz. There are
rumors.
There are rumors. Specifically, most of the people sent there don't come back. And a lot of the people that get sent there, when their personal effects are sent to their families, they're covered in blood.
Oh.
We think it might be worth checking out. But it's a suicide mission. Anybody that goes in is likely not coming back out. Jan says, perfect, we'll take it. Leave it to our cell. We'll take care of it. Don't you worry, dude. I got this. He goes running back to the group and says, congratulations, guys. I told them that we would provide a volunteer to go check out this Auschwitz place. Who would like to volunteer?
Knowing that Vitold was an absolute rock star.
Because Vitold's not going to let any of these people that joined this group because they trust him go on a suicide mission. Vitold's going to go himself.
Naturally.
Jan plays him perfectly.
Jerk.
So Vitold volunteers to go and infiltrate Auschwitz.
If anyone wants to go deep dive on this, there is a book called The Auschwitz Volunteer that is absolutely incredible.
There's also a book called just The Volunteer.
Oh, I think that's what it is.
By what's John?
Anyway,
They
can find it. It's the internet.
It's an excellent book. It's exceptional. So Vitold sets up this whole thing. He does not tell his wife and children.
Oh.
By the way, he's married, has 2 kids. He's 38 years old.
Oh.
Jack Fairweather, that's what it was. He's 38 years old. He's married, has 2 kids. All he tells his wife is that he is going on a very important mission and she might not hear from him for a while. That's all he tells her. It's agonizing. So he goes and the Gestapo are doing this big sweep of this area, and they are looking. He knows they're looking for a guy named Tomasz Serafinski, and so they make fake paperwork for Vitold in that name, Tomasz Serafinski, and he goes and intentionally gets caught in this sweep.
Weirdest case of identity theft ever.
Absolutely. And sure enough, actually, he's very lucky in this because they could have just like walked him into the woods and shot him in the head. There was a lot of that going around. But luckily, they send him to Auschwitz. And when I say luckily, I mean, so he gets to Auschwitz. If you're not familiar with the Auschwitz concentration camp, we're not going to go into all of it here, but I guess it's worth saying it's a death camp, right? People are sent there specifically to be killed. In the early days of the war, it is specifically for ethnic Poles, right? It's Polish people that they're sending to this labor camp where they work and starve them to death or beat them to death or shoot them to death. But they're not like industrially killing them. They're just killing them at a leisurely pace, but they are killing them.
Oh, man.
It is 100% a death camp still.
Right.
So Vitold gets in there. It is even worse than he could have imagined. And so he reaches out to the people on the outside and says, hey, guess what? Not a labor camp. It's a death camp. You need to get us out of here right now. And they say, we're going to need you to calm down, be professional. It can't possibly be as bad as you're saying. He says, okay. I will set up a resistance network in here. And I will train people so that as soon as we have the opportunity, we will rise up against the guards, kill them, take over the camp, and we just need you guys to drop us weapons and make a distraction and then be ready to come in and help us after we take the camp. And
it would have been amazing. I already know it didn't happen.
Yes. And they say, okay, stand by. We'll pass that up the line. So for the next almost 3 years, Vitold is sending reports from Auschwitz saying, guys, they're having us build giant crematoriums. This is going to get even worse. You need to bomb this place to rubble if you have to. If you have to kill all of us in here, fine. But this place needs to end. And they continue to just kind of shuffle this report among the bureaucracy between the Allies because it's all so over the top that people are like, this can't be. This is obviously a bit of an exaggeration. Yeah, no, Vitold was cold as ice. He didn't exaggerate a thing in his entire life. So he spends 3 years in there suffering immense hardship.
That was the word of the day.
Yeah, that was the word of the day. I'm not going to go into everything, but there are a couple cool things that I should at least touch on. One of the strongholds of the resistance inside of, there were 2 main places that the resistance kind of secretly took over. One was the hospital. they got a nurse there who initially did not want to do anything for the Nazis for obvious reasons, but they said, okay, look, you work for us. You inoculate all of the prisoners against typhus because everybody's dying of typhus. The guards don't want to die of typhus. This is a win-win.
Yeah.
You're
helping people.
You get to vaccinate, and occasionally we will ask you to do something horrible in exchange. We're Nazis. What do you expect? Of course they're going to ask him to do something horrible. Anyway, so they have this nurse who is now working in the hospital, but he is on the side of the resistance so he can, like, get guys out, like, oh, they are sick, and, like, give them a chance to rest before they die. He can smuggle supplies back and forth. And part of the process, right, the main method of spreading typhus is through flea bites. To make the vaccine, he is intentionally infecting and then killing fleas.
Makes sense.
But if there was a particularly bad guard,
Real sadistic type.
he would smuggle infected fleas to agents of the resistance, and they would plant those fleas in his clothing so that he would be bitten and die of seemingly the natural cause of typhus.
Oh, fleas as assassination weapons.
So so even though they are prisoners with, like, nothing, and they're being starved and beaten and tortured, they are still assassinating the worst of these guards to try to keep things under control. And remember, so Vitold had this philosophy of, like, okay, we're not getting out of here. We're not getting the support we need. Let's just try to keep people alive, right? Let's just look out for each other. And that's mostly what they're doing. The other story I want to touch on real quick, just to let you know how sharp this guy was, just how calculating, how just cool this guy was the other place that they took over, besides the hospital, was the tannery. Because tanneries are disgusting.
Yes. They are.
Reek to high heaven. So, when a guard is assigned to tannery duty, you know where he hangs out?
Outside the tannery.
Outside the tannery. So, inside the tannery, that's where all of the resistance guys end up doing all of their meetings and hiding all of their stuff and et cetera, because the guards won't go into the tannery because it smells too bad. Until one day, right, they know everybody in the tannery, and everybody in the tannery is on the side of the resistance. But that's starting to become kind of a well-known fact among the other prisoners. And so one day, a guy is transferred to the tannery who is conspicuously well-fed, conspicuously healthy.
Informer.
They ask around and find out he just sort of showed up one day and started asking a bunch of questions to the prisoners. They figure out he is a Gestapo spy.
Ooh.
So, they figure this out real quick. They go,
You don't look haggard at all.
You don't look terribly haggard, my friend. You don't fit in here. So, they appropriate this oil that I was not familiar with. But it's just this kind of common thing. The kind of thing that's not hard to get in a tannery. And they slip a little in his food. It doesn't kill him. Like, they can't get their hands on, like, an industrial poison. They would be very suspicious if they did. But it's enough to make him throw up. So he throws up. They say, "Oh, dang, buddy, let's get you to the hospital."
Oh dear, buddy, are you feeling okay?
You feeling okay? Let's get you to the hospital where our doctor works. They get to the hospital. The doctor, rather, he was a nurse, but they made him act like a doctor. The nurse, who is on their side, looks at him and says, "Oh no, it's meningitis."
Oh.
He is highly contagious and he's going to die if we don't get him into a bed right now. Guards, could you please get this guy into a bed because he's highly contagious and we need to get treating him right away? And the guards say, uh-huh. And promptly drag him outside of the hospital, shoot him in the head, and go on their way, with Vitold and his buddies going, oh no! The new guy at the tannery just got shot. So yeah, just ice cold, this guy.
So they use fleas to assassinate people, and in a rare twist, guards to kill people.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know who's good at killing people? Nazis. We can use that.
Anyway, he spends 3 years in Auschwitz. 3 years in the worst place on earth. Before finally the camp is broken up and they're sending all of the Polish people out to make room for the now trainloads and trainloads of Jewish people that they're bringing in now that they are moving it to like a full-on industrial death camp. So he, at this point, just gives up. He says, you know what? I've been here 3 years. I've been trying to tell you guys. They've sent all of my resistance network off to other places. I don't have any contact among the people that are coming in, and honestly, they're dying too fast for me to establish a network. I'm taking my ball and going home. I'm sick of this.
This is the worst.
He promptly escapes. Yeah. No, he doesn't have a great time of it. He does end up getting shot, just not by the...
But not
by the guards. He's actually shot by a random patrolman in a town that they pass through. Shoots him just through and through in his shoulder.
Oh.
That heals up and isn't a big deal. But yeah, he promptly escapes, goes and gets back in contact with the resistance. They send an operative to come get him, and the operative then takes him to meet with his boss. And on the way there, Vitold says, okay, so who's this guy we're going to meet? He says, well, it's my boss. He's a guy that's been with the resistance for years now. His name is Tomasz Serafiński.
Oh. That's my name, too.
That's my name, too. Tomasz Serafiński is the name that Vitold, the guy that Vitold impersonated to get thrown into Auschwitz. He is the leader of the resistance that Vitold is taken to report to.
Oh,
he walks into this guy's house, and the guy stands up to greet him, and Vitold introduces himself as, my name is Tomasz Serafiński. I was arrested on this date. I was taken to this, I was put in this location, then I was transferred here, tells him all of, and then I escaped and came here to report. I have come to give you back your name.
Guy's just so metal.
It really is. So he spends some time trying to get anybody, the resistance, the allies, whoever, to go destroy Auschwitz. Nobody listens. He ends up getting pulled back in, right? He's reunited with his family only briefly.
Can we skip the part of his really depressing death?
Sure. Why not?
Could we cut that part out? For time.
He's pulled into the Warsaw Uprising. So here's the Warsaw Uprising in a nutshell. The Nazis take over Poland, right? They take it. They have they make a secret deal with the Soviet Union that we get half of Poland, you get half of Poland. Then they stab the Soviets in the back. And so now the Soviets are coming back to retake Poland, and the Polish people, who are not on board with being conquered by anybody, say, okay, here's our opportunity. while the Nazis are fighting the Soviets, we'll launch a big uprising, declare our independence, get the Allies to help us, and we will be able to once again be independent, rather than letting the Soviets take over and being able to finally push the Nazis back out. They are initially successful. But the Soviets stop their advance and basically go, well, if you guys think you can be independent, go ahead. And basically give the Nazis all of the time and slack that they need to come and murder literally hundreds of thousands of Polish civilians in Warsaw. The Allies at this point are too afraid to upset the Soviets to do anything about it. They just
let it happen.
let it happen. Vitold is fighting in the middle of all this. He's actually like he takes over part of this uprising.
Faked his name again.
Yeah. Yes, actually. Yeah, he's not supposed to be. He doesn't have to be doing any of this.
Yeah.
He has the connections. He has put in his time. He can get out. But he just, he is street to street fighting against the Nazis, trying to save the people who they are just massacring. Right? There's no surrender. There's no quarter given. No demarcation between civilians and fighters. They're just killing everybody. Vitold's in the middle of that, trying to save people once again. The war ends. He actually leaves Poland for a while, but is eventually convinced to come back and act as an agent for the legitimate Polish government, which is now in exile. It goes poorly for him.
I thought we agreed to skip this part.
That's as much as I said. I said it went poorly for him. And there have been some efforts made to locate the actual place of his burial. So that we can... There's memorials to the man everywhere. And he deserves...
Every one of them.
Every one of them. Because he was just the epitome of courage and selflessness and just absolute sang-froid in the face of the enemy. Witold Pilecki.
Nice. All right. This should probably be our last one.
Why? I have so many more.
Let me end on... We'll try to keep this under 2 hours, shall we?
Fine.
So the last one I want to do is Jerry John Rawlings.
Oh, yeah.
JJ.
Really?
as he
JJ?
was often known as JJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Let me tell you a story.
Cool.
So, Africa, heavily colonized by European powers, but then eventually kind of left to their own devices for the most part, and that did not always go well. In fact, it is still not going well on multiple levels because of government corruption, lack of education, warlords, child soldiers, and a genocide here and there. Anyways, so one country that struggled to really find its stride was Ghana. Okay.
Not to be confused with Guyana.
No, this is Ghana. It is over by Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, Senegal, kind of on the west coast.
So Western.
Yes.
Western
Yes,
Africa.
Western Africa. Just a bit below the Sahara, right? Kind of in there.
Okay.
Cool place. I ended up with multiple friends from Ghana.
Really?
Yeah, just randomly. One was a refugee, and one's just a friend of mine from church or whatever. Anyway, so you have the regular corrupt government going on, right? And you have like some coups going on. And one coup that's planned is by this guy, Jerry John Rawlings, who his childhood dream was just to be a pilot. That's all he wanted to be, was a pilot. He joined the military. They, oddly enough, switched his last name. His name was Jerry Rawlings John. His last name was John after his Scottish father. And they just decided that John was a first name and Rawlings was a last name, and they just switched it, and he kept it. Like, that's just
So Rawlings was his middle name?
and
Okay.
yeah, John was his last name, but yeah, they just switched it when he joined the military, and he just kind of rolled with it.
Okay.
Anyway, not the most interesting thing about this guy. Well, I gotta say right up front, the thing I like about JJ is this: he evolved, he changed. Like it's just this really cool thing about like humility and growth. Anyways, so he goes to stage a coup of his own with like 6 of his buddies.
That's not a lot of people for a coup.
It is not. And they are caught and tried and scheduled for execution.
Well,
right?
that was a very quick story. Well done.
It's real quick. No, but during his trial, the lawyers are doing all their lawyering things of, heretofore and subsequent to, and he's like, you know what? This is stupid. And he grabs the microphone. This is like straight out of some inspirational movie. Grabs the microphone and makes a speech. It's like, I'm not an expert in all this. I'm not an expert in that, but I'm an expert in in working on an empty stomach. I'm an expert in not knowing where my next meal is coming from. I'm an expert in, what else did he say?
Flying airplanes.
Going to bed with a headache because of an empty stomach.
Huh.
And his speech, like, touches the nerves of the nation. Right? And all of a sudden, even the prosecution was like, we're executing this guy because he wanted to clean up this mess and we can't have that. And like, even the prosecution was oddly honest about like, he's probably a pretty good guy, but anyway, let's kill him.
Execute him or whatever, I guess.
I guess. Yeah.
If you must.
It's another odd thing in the story was the prosecution was like oddly honest about, no, he's a pretty good guy.
Suddenly lost motivation.
He's guilty of treason and all that, and sure, we're going to kill him, but, we get it.
Guilty of treason, but aren't we all in our heart of hearts?
Anyways, so he is waiting for execution.
Okay.
His buddies, now with much more support from the nation, come and rescue him from jail, stage a second coup successfully.
Oh, wow.
He is now at the head of the government, proceeds with his buddies to do a little, I think he called it house cleaning.
Oh.
There is trial, imprisonment, and execution of who are deemed the most corrupt leaders. Okay. This is probably the most morally questionable part of his story. But for that, I would just say...
Well, rounding up and killing your political enemies is... that's...
Right. It's kind of Dictator 101.
Yeah.
Right? Military coup, establish a junta, kill off your rivals.
Yeah, so
right?
when you're saying that's the most morally gray, there's still some real estate there to build on.
I would just say we don't know what all was going on. And we know that he then departed very sharply from the regular military dictator pattern. Because he then, once he's kind of cleaned house, hands it over to the civilian government.
Hands the government over.
Yeah. To civilian rule. backs the military off. It's like, okay, we've cleaned up the mess. Take it away. And yeah, becomes one of the few people ever in history to give up power.
So what was his job?
Well, they actually kind of fire him after that because you can't have, those sorts of people around.
You were okay, but like,
Uh,
I understand, but he's like, okay, I am president and generalissimo. Is he just like
cleans things up and then, just hands it back over to the civilian government and backs the military off, right? Believes in rule by the people.
Okay,
right?
but he's still generalissimo, but then he allows himself to be fired.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Joining
Okay.
the ranks of those such as Cincinnatus and George Washington, right?
Okay.
Not even the end of the story, though, because then the civilian government, after a couple of years, he realizes is doing a bad job. And they are crashing the economy, and he goes, you know what? Nah. And goes and takes it back. So this is coup number 3.
I have so many questions. Please continue.
Anyway, the civilian government, was frankly just doing a bad job. He took back over and created the military junta and just gonna run it this way for a bit. Makes mistakes, learns, fixes them, establishes a constitution, has open elections, is elected president. There is some...
Wait. Like, is elected president in like a legitimate election?
Yes.
Or like a everybody raise your hands that wants me to stay president or I'll cut your hands off?
So, in what was judged a fair election, he was elected. However, there were problems in the process. It was essentially oversimplified to the point where other parties would not have a fair shake.
Okay.
Right? So, yes, a fair election. It was judged by outside things as having been a free and open election, but with a thumb on the scale because these other parties did not actually have access to the same sort of things that he did.
Okay.
And so he fixes that. What? He fixes their election processes and is elected for a second term, this time in a fully open and free and everyone can vote. Much, much higher voter turnout. Has essentially established a multi-party system in his own country.
JJ, you confuse me, sir.
He breaks the mold, doesn't he?
He really does. I mean, usually this is the like golden swimming pool full of cocaine phase of a dictatorship.
No, he is actually an incredibly hands-on president. Like, he'll be going through, see people like, loading cocoa beans, hop out and help them. Like, there's so many pictures of him, like, carrying beans or driving a tractor. And I guess that was kind of his deal. He would just, like, jump in and help. And, yeah, he's a different kind of guy. And like I said, that is not to bypass any of his mistakes, but that was the cool thing is, like, he made mistakes, he learned from them, and he continued to evolve. And, yeah, hits the end of his second term, and it's just like, peace. And steps down, giving the reins over to his primary political rival. Yeah, the person who's been campaigning against him and everything is like, all right, you got it. And leaves and just goes and, like, founds a university and stuff.
Okay.
And yeah.
I don't know why I'm surprised at this point. If you had said he just sprouts angel wings and flies off the palace roof, I guess I would have believed that too. Wow. So he's just
also looked a bit like James Earl Jones.
You're kidding.
It's not really relevant, but not so much in his younger years, but in his older years, strong James Earl Jones vibe.
Well,
He was way cool. And like I
Well
said,
done.
that's not even to say like here was an amazing person from beginning. And like no, he seriously made mistakes. He kind of like toyed around with like some socialistic stuff at the beginning, like communism type things, but it didn't work, so he changed. And yeah, at each thing, like I said, it's this very inspiring story of, I guess, humility. You know, he had these strong ideals, he fought for them, but if it turns out those ideals were wrong, he modified them, but still kept fighting just as hard for his people. And yeah, ultimately just stepped down and just did good works the rest of his life. And
well, good for you, JJ. That's
yeah, J.J. Rowling's.
weirdly inspiring. I don't know what it's inspiring me to do.
Visit Ghana for me.
Visit Ghana for starters, I guess. Yeah.
Well, Ghana is known for its almost odd level of stability because it is surrounded. That almost whole belt across Africa is more known for its genocides and warlords and blood diamonds and all that sort of stuff. And Ghana just kind of, I mean, it's still poor, definitely, but it just kind of does its thing. And yeah, is oddly stable for that region. And I feel like a lot of that is because of JJ just taking the country over, establishing a strong-arm military dictatorship, and using that to forge a constitutional democracy that he can then just step down from. And yeah, it was kind of amazing. And yeah, people don't know who he is. And you know what? I feel like people should know who he is, because this guy was another George Washington of sorts.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good
that
on
was
you,
fun.
JJ.
Anyway,
All right, that's 2 hours.
Yep. We did not even get to everything. I really wanted to touch on
we've got
Crazy
more.
Horse and
I had Father Damien and Jonathan Napella.
yep. We will see, ladies and gentlemen. It is entirely possible that maybe these clips and recordings will suddenly gain popularity and we'll be back. But to be honest, yeah, there just wasn't really enough. Enough support really. Viewership. From when we started about 6 months ago, our viewership actually kind of went down over time.
Steadily declined.
Which is a real shame because we had so much fun doing this.
And we are can't state enough how much we appreciate those of you who have stuck around and who have been here every week. Thanks, guys. It has been so much fun. We hope that you've had as much fun as we have.
We did it as long as we did because of you.
Absolutely.
For those that were coming, that this really was done for you and us. Let's be honest. It was a bit selfish because this is what we do for fun. It really, really is.
Because, man, we love the sound of our own voices.
I do love a good story.
That too.
Anyway, all the usual stuff. Like, comment, and subscribe. We will not be back next week, but we will be putting some more energy into Word of the Day, so expect to see some more of those out, and there'll be more clips coming out in the future. Anyway, signing off for the last time, I guess. Any last words?
It's a lot of pressure. The rest is silence.
The rest is silence.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Say something inspiring, Michael. Nah, we're good. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Night.